think we are live, finally. This took like an hour longer than I was expecting because all the OBS settings got, sorry, all of my OBS settings got messed up for some reason. And yeah, I don't know what happened, but it did not let me actually start the stream. Like, it's basically complaining about the health of the video because I want to make sure I'm streaming in 4K. Otherwise, text and stuff is not very easy to see. I might actually make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Anyway, we're up, we're running, it's working finally. So this is great. I can see that I've got my iPad set up today, getting a bit better at knowing what I need. Also trying a new OBS plugin so that I am sort of cropped inside this little area, but over the code, which I think is making it, hopefully makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see. And there's not like a box around me. I guess we'll see how that goes. Right, let's get into it. So yesterday we ended in a kind of a weird place. It was really like I was distracted because the stream was basically stalling and it was like it wasn't even recording. And so I didn't really make any progress. Well, what we did end up with though was we realized that at the moment the game I wanted to make, we were calling Retro Invaders, but essentially it's Space Invaders, right? And in order to do that, we need at least to be able to like render sprites on the screen, but we don't need like a tile map, right? Because that would be more like for example, a platformer kind of game. And this is a little bit of a problem just at the moment because the way that I wrote the current level implementation is very much a single hard-coded level based on a tile map. And that's obviously kind of goes a little bit against what I want to achieve here. So I started working on like adding some different types and some different ideas. Let's go over what I did do. This is all experimentation, and I'm not 100% convinced yet. I've been sort of having conversations with Codex over here to sort of frame it in my mind a little bit better and make sure that I understand what I want to achieve and what that could look like. This is definitely like one of those areas. This is one of the like one of those areas that I need to learn. So this is great. To be honest, it's very challenging at the moment just because I don't really know what it should do. Maybe a little bit from like an interface or like a interaction point of view, but in terms of how the implementation should look, that's definitely eluding me at the moment. So what did I come up with? I think the main realization that I started to have was that a camera should not really be, at the moment, the camera is like a thing that you inject into the game. So you have one camera. And as soon as I realized like I wanted a different type of level, like basically without a camera, I then realized I really want the camera to be a level detail, not a game detail. Different levels might even want different types of cameras, or later at some point it would be kind of cool to do like a split view multiplayer, which I would imagine the right way to do that, because you want one gameplay, right? So I would imagine the right way would be that you have two side-by-side cameras that are viewing the same scene from different perspectives. And so each of them is rendering at kind of half the resolution. And so therefore I would assume, well, I don't know if I could say that the performance would be the same. It's probably less because there'll be some calculations that have to happen twice, I imagine. But at least in terms of rendering, you're rendering the same number of pixels, right? But just from different perspectives. So anyway, this means the camera, you potentially need in a level like that, you want your camera you want two cameras, right? You want multiplayer. And I don't know if that's a level detail. Actually, that's probably not. No, I was just thinking that's kind of now, the level is not deciding that alone, because you want to be able to say, I've got a level and I've got 1 or 2 players. Now I decide what camera setup I need. So that kind of feels like a responsibility that exists separately from the two, which is kind of a good thing, because this first game, we don't even need the concept of a camera, so we could just ignore it for now. Let's take that out. Let's take that out. The second thing was collisions. Excuse me. So again, right now I was focused on like a simple platformer. You know, you're jumping on blocks and off of blocks, and or even if you're top down, you know, you're moving around, but you're colliding with other objects. And this makes sense, but it also means that you have how do I want to say it? You if you have like a Space Invader style game, you're going to shoot a bullet. That bullet is going to move and then eventually collide with one of those other objects. Now you can do this. I would totally imagine that we can do this with the current approach, which is using AABB collision tests. The bounding box of each bullet is just going to be the test. So I think this is going to be okay or doable. It's probably not the right way to do it. I'm not 100%. I would have thought maybe a ray would make more sense in this case, but I didn't go with ray collision testing right now, and I don't really want to add another thing to an already growing list of stuff I need just to make the first game, which is a simple game. I'm probably overthinking some of this stuff, by the way, because I added a lot of cool stuff, and now it's really I'm happy, and I'm also disappointed, because I thought that I had added really as much as possible, just the basics, and I knew that with like blend modes and even layering, for example, potentially that those were a little bit overkill. So I only spent a day on them, but I had a feeling that or I had the feeling that I was being good at like restricting myself. But I think now that I'm like thinking about this game and thinking to myself, if you were creating this game completely from scratch, you wouldn't have even all the code I have. And so that makes me feel a little bit like I've gone down a really bad rabbit hole. I mean, it might not be true. You know, I did try to build it like a mini engine first, so that's inevitably going to result in this kind of thing. But I don't know. Let's see. I'm hoping that this is not as bad as I am worried that it is. That was a really weird sentence, but anyway. So there's collision stuff we need to think about, but I think we're okay. And then we really get to entity. So currently, I also had a hard-coded player and even hard-coded enemy entity, just so I could place things on the screen and test collision detection. That's obviously not going to work because we need to be able to spawn entities. And I really need a way to load a level. But really what you want is to be able to like define a level and say that there are like enemies in these locations, even if it's grid-based. The player sits in this, like spawns in this location. And then that's kind of your starting map, right? Or level. We should call this a scene for now, sorry. So you're basically like your starting scene. And then the code for each of those entities, right? So an enemy has like one file that with all of its code that describes how it behaves, and the same for a player. There's multiple instances, so when we load the level, we need to instantiate a new instance for every single one of those enemies, but there's only one code file that represents each one, right? Which is absolutely to be expected. But what that means is we need a way to register the types of entities that are loaded or supported, or however you want to think about it, associated. with that scene. And then we need a way for those instances to be created automatically and participate in the rest of the engine that we already built, right? So I keep saying we because it's me and AI working together, by the way. So in this case, I was thinking the entity registry, this is a concept, let's say, that I introduced last night. This is not implemented anywhere really at the moment. It's just me sketching ideas out. I was thinking like we have a registry where we have something like an entity kind. This is actually really just a string. And this way it could be defined like a text file for a level. And so for example, you would add like an entity, like a thing, you know, in whatever text format we go with, let's say JSON for a second. I don't necessarily think I'll go with JSON, but so we'd put like an entity in a specific location, and we say this is a player, right? So at runtime, we want to read this registry, okay? So we need to read that level and say, oh, go and load a entity for that kind. So we would have hopefully called this register function, passing an entity here. And I added on the entity itself, I added support for this. So basically it needs to statically define like a constant. What is the kind for this particular entity, right? And so this enforces that you have to have at least one, or you have to have exactly one kind per entity. And so when you pass an entity here, when you register the entity, I should say, let's say player, it's going to register its kind string for that, and the level needs to match it up, right? So later when you want to make one of these, you can try to make one based on that kind, and this will let you know if we haven't registered it, which is just a developer error. And then if it does, then it will initialize a new entity from this. And then this would be called, I guess, by like the game, or I'm not sure yet actually, but like let's say by the game right now, and get inserted into the entity store, which is the runtime storage for each instance of an entity. So this is essentially, this allows the store or the game to generate and spawn multiple entities of the same type as needed, which is what we want. So I think that potentially could work. We'll see. I also created the concept of an entity spawn. So this is like, basically this is like a, I don't actually know if this is correct now. I think that this was, if I remember correctly, my thinking was that this would come from the text file, but it doesn't make sense because of the entity here. So this would need to change, excuse me, to be more of a the type. So like, you know, the kind, the entity kind, and a position. I don't think an ID is necessary because this is just to represent like a spawned entity in a level, right? This is essentially when we read the file, we want to generate one of these, and then we iterate over all of these spawns, and we spawn all the enemies and the players and whatever other entities we have. So I don't think that we need that. I think this should be entity kind. Oops. And then this can be like that. So that gives us a representation of that. Now these two, the rest of this is basically like entity record. I don't, is that used? Oh, this is, this was, I think, an earlier, it's used, I think, but it's really like hard coded here. So we basically, for each entities, and these are like passed in through the initializer. This is what we want to come from like a scene. But right now they're passed in as part, just hard coded into the initializer when you instantiate the game. We iterate over those and we generate a state, which is like a live state for that. So basically the state represents the backing storage, I guess, for an entity. So you can move it around and change its speed and stuff like that. And a sprite. This then sets its initial position. Preparation context. I think that I didn't think I need that per. Oh, this is to set up. Sorry. Yeah, this is basically because I wanted to have like a prepare method. I mean, technically, this spawn position can be like overridden as a result of this, which I think is fine. But anyway, regardless, this is basically to like set it up. Mostly what this is actually for is so that the sprite sizing stuff works, because I didn't really feel like it made sense for like the level editor or the level definition, whatever you want to call it, should represent the size of all of the objects. And also an entity itself, for me, feels like a position and a velocity at its core. And I think that the fact that you can scale it, for example, and it has a natural size, for me, that feels like it comes or should come completely from the asset. At least in a pixel art game, that might not always be true in the future, but right now that seemed like the simplest solution. So basically what this does is it sets up a preparation context for the level. This could be right or wrong for future. It then calls prepare on every entity, which enables that entity to set itself up with its sprite and stuff like that. And then it calls finalize preparation. And basically, this finalized preparation is for that sizing. I think literally doesn't do anything right now. This was an idea, and I feel like we kind of went away from the idea. So I need to tidy this up. But basically, what the idea was for a sprite to be loaded in the prepare, right? The entity would do this. So actually, if we go to this, and then, no, not that one. Apologies. Why did I click on the wrong one? I did. Sorry, this method here. You can see that we set up the sprite there. And then we call finalized. I think that this is going to, I feel like I've got, that feels like something's broke, in a commit has been broken, because if I go to sprite, oh, sorry, sprite in pixel, there, this net, oh, it's part of the material. Well, it's derived from the material. Entity state. That's okay. This is like cached. Oh, not sort of. Or derived, I should say. Okay, yeah, this is wrong. I don't know if I reverted something or if we changed in between. Like honestly, there was so many little changes as a part of this stuff. Oh, sorry, as a part of this, so I might have made a mistake here, but it's fine. Basically, I wanted to have entity registry. Sorry, I just went to. I wanted to have sprite derive its size from its material. And if you go to material, you can see here that a shape, if you just wanted to use like a basic shape, you give it a shape and then you give it a size, right? So that then we have a size from the that we define in code or whatever. And then if you actually load from a sprite, you instead have the source rect from your texture, which might have a size or will have a size of say 16 by 16, 48 by 48, whatever it is. And that size would then be automatically used. And I think that is working in the sense that natural size is doing that. But what we were trying to do, if I go back here, sorry, I went a bit too far. This one. No, that's collision system. Where am I? Sprite entity state. Here. What this setup was supposed to do was to prepare the entity, which basically would load up the sprite or whatever, but it also may in that method you have the opportunity to set the size directly if you wanted to, like an override essentially. And so when we call final preparation, this was supposed to say, you know what, they've provided a custom size so we don't inherit from the sprite, or we didn't get a size, now let's grab the size from the sprite and cache it. And then that would become the new size permanently. So from this point on, you could only, for example, use scale to modify it. That way, because if you can modify the size, then you can end up like messing around with like the size of, like, say, the colliders relative to the sprite as well, because they typically from the game code point of view, you're actually setting these values in local space at all times. So if you set up a collider, you're setting it up relative to the position and size of your sprite itself. It's just easier to think about and reason about. So you don't want to be able to modify that stuff after the fact, because then it gets really hairy in different situations. So I thought this was the right approach, but I'm now really questioning it. Okay. I think what we should do. Where was? Okay, yeah, this is game code. I need to get rid of some of the stuff. There's a bunch of, like, I'm just sorry, I'm just seeing like code that needs a bit of a cleanup at the moment. Okay, so I think we need to do a little. Oh, every time I come back to this, I realize that I'm taking 2 steps backwards. I guess it makes sense because now I'm getting down to like detail rather than like an obscure concept of a game, so to speak. But one thing I am wondering is, where am I now? Okay, so the current changes are irrelevant. It's just the thing that we just talked about. Okay, let's actually reset that there. And get a log. Just restores the playground. Yeah, so this last bit here is like a work in progress. So if we actually check out the commit before that, I think this runs basically every commit. I normally have it running. Yeah. Okay, and we've got this yeah, working. So if we now go to prepare in the game, enemy, for example, and then just, oops, sorry, and then we just check this here. I just want to see if that actually had. Okay, so it didn't have a implementation before either, but I'm a bit confused. I guess it could be coming from the material. I mean, this definitely does have size. I mean, to be honest, I don't mind that it's not there. I'm just surprised because I really thought I had, I don't remember taking it out. It's possible that I did, because I did have to do, it was like 2 days ago, I had to do a ton of cleanup around around the types, and like moving code around. The biggest thing was like for the renderer. So this was most of these files, well, not everything here actually, but like maybe almost all of that, not all of it, but almost all of that was basically not commented in a single file, and largely it was in the platform layer. And so each platform had very, very similar implementations around this, and they were duplicated. And so like if I want to port the platform or maintain like the code, especially the renderer code, I had to maintain both of those at the same time, and that was really tricky. So I actually used AI to go through and help me identify the patterns and to lift that up into the engine so that it was platform agnostic. Um, and this is great now because honestly, like you can see these files are really mostly just like a bunch of types to like help define everything, and they're really small, and they're taking care of like batching and render commands and stuff like that. So they're a lot easier to manage and like to identify performance issues and stuff like that. Um, like I don't know, I'm not worried about performance. Is the right way to say it right now, because I really don't have enough going on to like you know know where to focus any attention. So it doesn't make sense. It would be too premature. But I can see, for example, here. I know that this is not particularly expensive actually, but let's say, for example, at some point I want to find all my loops. I have a nice, really central place here that has a loop and it has branching, right? And not only that, there's like array modifications and stuff, so there could be like allocations and stuff to think about. At the moment, like I said, I'm really not concerned about any of that. But yeah, so anyway, this was a really good move, but it doesn't solve the thing that we want to solve today. I do feel like today I am less prepared than I would like. Every day I got like I sort of felt like I knew exactly what I needed to do. I was really focused and I would just push forwards and get a lot done, which is how I got to where I am now. But I do feel like today I'm a little less clear on the smallest next step. And I think the reason for that is because now I'm thinking about an actual game, and that requires it's you have this inner conflict that goes on during when you're designing something and building something. You have the high level design and then the low level implementation, right? In this case, there's also a game that uses this other library, and so you have like another layer of abstraction there. And I have to constantly jump between these, but up until this point, I was thinking really mostly inside of the engine, and the higher level abstraction that was largely focused on like systems and architecture, and the implementation was just making sure that those things are working. Now we're talking about achieving a specific goal with a game, and most of those things fit really well. I think the renderer, I will say this is probably something worth quickly talking about. I think the collision system is sufficient enough right now and doesn't necessarily require any changes. Um, the controllers are also sufficient enough. The top-down player controller specifically is what we're going to want. The renderer, I think, is also great. Like, I really am proud of that one, and I think that it's really just based on like rendering sprites, and it automatically takes care of batching and all that kind of stuff. So I really don't think that we need to do anything there. Similarly, shapes, like the way that I've implemented the shape library is really good. The sound is simple, very simple. It's just loading the assets, similar for, and same for sprite. And tiles we don't need right now. That definitely needs some work. The tile manager stuff itself is not so bad, but the way that we like define and load tiles obviously needs work. So the main thing is we don't have a scene manager of some kind, or scenes or levels in general. It's kind of the goal we're trying to hit with this with today. We also have entities, but we need to load and spawn them correctly. We don't have that today, not yet. And I don't really think we need to worry about camera. So that's probably a good thing, just to remove something. Okay, I would say Did I don't want. Nope. Let's just go back to main. All right. So now I think it's not compiling because of some changes I made. Oh no, it is compiling. Okay, good. I did try to make sure that it was always compiling, but sometimes that doesn't work out. So this is not correct, or it's not a thing that we want. If it's not used, I'm going to take it out for now. Oh, maybe I just renamed it because that actually looks like it's the current. It's the hard-coded version or whatever. But okay, that's fine. So that if it's in use, we just leave it alone for now. I don't know what the difference in that case between entity spawn and entity record is then. I do not remember. Let's start a new chat here. In the code base, we have entity record and entity spawn. What's the difference between these? Let's ask AI because it'll be able to analyze the code base faster than I can. But yeah, I do not remember why I would create both. Because entity record wouldn't make sense given that we have entity store. Oh, unless that's just what that refers to. Entity store. No, of course. Because we have entity state, which is the runtime representation. So I'm not sure. Entity spawn is input config for creating game entities. It's public, pass, blah, blah. Use once internal runtime holder for active. No, so this is not true. Entity state is the runtime state. Why would we need the record as well? I don't think that that's behavior state, but there's no behavior on it. Yeah. Behavior identity row. Huh? I think it's, I don't think I introduced that then, because I wouldn't have written that. Okay, so it's a box for holding type arrays. Right, so I mean, that's a very weird way of doing it in Swift. Because it actually holds the entity. I still don't really think I agree with it. And I don't think I introduced that, and I must have missed that. I have been reviewing all of the code, literally every line of code, but that doesn't mean that I don't miss something or that it was introduced at a stage where it made sense to me and then later on now doesn't. I'm not sure, but it's fine. Okay, I don't really like that. Okay, I think I want to be able to say I'm a bit conflicted only because there's two perspectives here that I want to solve for. One is we need to be able to load or represent and load scenes and levels. And the second thing is that we want to be able to read in and spawn entities as a part of those levels. So I had the concept of a scene here This is something I was also playing around with. The idea is that a scene is a protocol or an interface that at the moment, the main thing that we need to know is what assets are required to load the scene. So this would represent like the jump wave sound and the player sprite right now. And that's a dedicated type for those, literally those two things. So it's just a type to wrap those things up. Then you would have a specific type of scene. So I had this idea of like just a world scene that has a level and obviously the assets, but the assets in this case would come from the level, I think. And then the level needs obviously the assets themselves. And then I don't want to like over engineer this to have all these different types of like scenes and levels and whatever. So my simplest idea right now was that you'd have a tile map and we'd just make it optional, because a tile map it participates in collision detection, but essentially all it really is a grid-based like layout that you render to make it look like a world, right? It's not really more complicated than that. And so I just kind of felt like if I leave it out, then it just doesn't render any tile map, and I can still render stuff into the level, and the level doesn't necessarily have to be grid based. So this doesn't force me down one or the other path, I think. And then the other thing that's necessary is you need markers. So you in like a level editor, you'd want to say this is where all these entities are going to go, like spawn from, and the player and stuff like that. So that's where the spawn marker comes in, and this is that thing. Ah, so that is there. It's just it's named something different. Oh, that's not actually letting me go to it. Let me quit Xcode sometimes. Um, Sometimes lately, I am on the latest betas, and I think there's a bug in Xcode at the moment where it doesn't always reload the file from disk. There we go. Was that there just now? I feel like it wasn't, but I could be wrong. So spawn marker is part of the scene. Makes sense, right? This basically is a marker position. So it has the kind, this is basically what I said earlier. We should have, so you have a position on the map and a entity kind of, for this particular marker. And then, yeah, so essentially your scene level, specifically, your level has the markers, an optional tile map, and the assets needed to load for, I guess, each marker or whatever. And then that gets wrapped up in a world, as I said, which has access to the level. And so the thing that you would create is a world, I guess, like that. Yeah, that makes sense at the moment. So the first thing we want to do, well, we can't actually do this yet because we don't have all the types and stuff. Maybe AI can help with this bit. So right now, if you go to the game, you instantiate with old level. I just renamed it to old level so that we didn't have any naming conflicts. But basically, old level is kind of similar. It had a hard-coded spawn point right now, and it has a tile map, but you can see it's kind of similar. And because it uses tile map, it's possible, at least I think, for us to redefine that. Actually, I can see here, I think this is the one I end up using at the moment. So there's potentially we could, I'm not sure actually which one we're using, it doesn't really matter. Okay, I think this one's a good point. For the tile map, it has like a bound so that you know how big the thing is. Don't know if I need to worry about that yet. it might be affecting visibility for like the renderer. We'll have to check that later. So I guess what would be cool here is if I could pass level here, the new level, like sorry, world, and then entities, sound sprites, these three could disappear. And we could update at least this implementation to read everything from the world. So let's just create like a second one here, copy in the bits that we absolutely want. And then here we're going to say, I kind of feel like, so size here is the resolution of the game, so that stays, that doesn't change. I'm gonna let this be live here at the end rather than I'm always thinking about the order, but you know what, right now it really doesn't matter. Okay, so we got this, and then we got a level and a tile map. So that's going to be the tile map. Oh, actually what we want is the, well, we want this. And then we want to read this for now. For the spawn point, this is not going to be correct yet, but let's just try it. And I'm actually going to like I don't want this to end up in the top left corner. So I'm just going to shift it down. Oh, and tile map is obviously, okay. I think yeah, let's just do this and say, what can we do there? I do have, is it under tile map? Yeah, I think I have level 1 with a world size, which is probably not the correct value, but it's fine. And then tile size, okay. Level 1, is that, oh, that's not the one I'm thinking of. It's this one, sorry. This is an extension of old level. Oh, okay. So what we could do then, we could say if let, a little bit annoying, but let's say tile map is equal to, oops, sorry, world.tilemap else. And then this is just like to make it compile, right? We'll make sure that we define this correctly. And it's kind of like backward compatibility just while we're doing the transition, and test if this actually works or gets close to working. And then let's do, sorry, not this. We want to say, what is it down there? Self dot level is equal to, doesn't like that. Why not? I think it's just not picking up. Like I said, Xcode's having some weird issues. It really is. Let's do level 1 just so that we like know when it happens. And then for the world size, I think we can safely pass that, to be honest. And then this needs to be 16, 16. It does not like that. Interesting. Old level has no member level 1. Except it does. Oh, of course. This is in the game. This code here is actually in Pixel. It's in the engine. So it's not possible at the moment for us to do this. Okay, well, that's fine then. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep this even simpler then. I'm just going to initialize and say columns, I don't know, 20 and 10 and 16 and 16, fill it with empty and a spawn point of, yeah, 1. It's fine. Actually, that's not correct because that's literally 1, 1. It's for like velocity. It's useful. And we'll do this, okay? And I'm just going to, there we go, multi-line that. And then this here can go out, okay? And then here now we can say, so actually we want this to be level, right? Oh no, sorry, it was actually correct. Here we want to do this and say tile map and a spawn point of something. Okay, that gives us the tile map. Now we can also copy in this stuff. Okay, camera rig at the moment. Is camera rig optional? It's not. But I think because I don't really want to pass that, the viewport size can just be the world. For the anchor, I believe I gave myself point, which I guess we just want the center. That should be unit point now that I think about it. I think you can say pass entities as from, I can't remember if I did that. I remember thinking about it. And we'll just do snap. Basically, I think that this should just basically not try to anchor on anything, but we'll see. And composition, I thought that was optional, but I guess not. But you can essentially, this is like if you want to offset, which we don't. So we'll just pass 0. We don't need any constraints. Actually, we should set a constraint here, which usually is the bounds of the world itself. And for camera effects, we don't need any. I think that's optional. Yeah. Let me just check this out just to see if that's a composition. Oh, they have default values. Oh, okay. So anchoring does not, but we could actually just do that then, just to keep it super simple. Okay, then we've got sprite assets and sound assets, and these should be a bit easier. So we can say sound assets is equal to the world.assets.sounds. Yep, and oops, self.assets is equal to sprites. Okay, that's good. And then if we, oh, sorry, and then we've got this stuff here that needs to be done. So we don't have entities here to actually do the spawning. So let's comment that out for a minute. Update camera delta infinity. I don't remember what the purpose of that was, or why that would be a good idea. Camera rig update. I mean, it works, so I must have, I don't remember why. I must have needed a very large number and I just picked infinity, but I don't remember why. The rebuild sprite buffer is necessary. This is basically this code. This gets called every frame, but obviously we want to set things up before the frame. And this essentially just goes through and, like, you know, sets up the tile map and the I thought I took out the render stats, but anyway, and sorry, and it sets up the yeah, the render batching and stuff like that, sorting, whatever. It's essentially done per frame anyway, but like I say, you want initial positions and everything to be in the right place, otherwise you can see some sort of load in which you don't want. And that's fine for now. I would say this here is the trickiest part, but before we write that, I would like to update this to actually use the new world if we can, just, or at least just to see if it doesn't work, why. So we don't want old level 2 anymore. Oh, actually, let me leave it there so I can see it as a reference, because I might want the level 2 for the, actually I don't think I do, but let's see. So the way this currently worked is very different. So let's say return init this one here. Okay, so yeah, this one's still that. This is still nearest. This is still 60. But now we want this and a level. Oh, and I think level is not having a public initializer yet. Okay. And then here we're going to want to define our sprite and sounds. So that's essentially this and jump. Same as this is basically what we did down here. For the tile map, this is what we actually do want. So we can just grab that from there right now. And then now we can actually have proper markers, although it looks like I also haven't given them a public initializer. And so now we can say, okay, so this is the kind basically here does not have, we need to do something like that. And then at the down here, we have to have a look at what we were doing. So, okay, so there's level dot spawn point. That's cool, because that means we already have the first one. What else do we have? Player enemy dot kind, and enemy was at 64, and I think there's one more pickup. Yeah, pickup dot kind. Oops, I'm using by accident. Pickup was okay. So this one's a little more convoluted because I just basically used the to offset it from the player, but it's fine. Okay, there we go. So technically, I think we can remove that now. Now this is still not great, but if we can make this work, markers just needs to come in from a file later on, tile map as well, technically, and also technically should therefore be able to pass nil here and get the because we don't really, like we said, we sometimes don't want that. I mean, markers as well, like you could create a tile map where you don't have any markers, I guess. So maybe they can all default to something. But for now, we want to reuse. We want to see if we can load the level with this approach. So that's cool that we managed to get like just to move it towards the correct initializer or closer to a correct initializer. All we're really doing is like moving things into a world instead of having them set up directly, but that's fine. So now here we were expecting to have entities, and entities are created, were being created where I don't see entities as global state, which, or not global, sorry, but like on the game type. So they must have been created previously. Oh, I can't even. Let's open the diff here because I've forgotten entities. Oh, right. They were being injected in the initializer as entity spawn. So I'm just going to add this, oops, so we can see what the, oops. Okay, so each of these, okay, I see. So what, one thing, I don't see a way around this at the moment because everything's programmatic. and we don't have like a dynamic runtime. So we need to statically upfront, we need to say this player is a part of this world. And I don't know if this will always live here. I highly doubt it, if I'm being honest. But I think we should do that, and then yeah, entity, sorry, this would be type kind. So it's just proxying through, of course. I can't remember. Oh, it's fine, but this needs to be mutating. And yeah, I think the labels on this are probably wrong. Register entity only. Oh, okay. Of course. Okay. Oops. There we go. So if we come back to here where we create the world, this one here, we basically just need to like move this up and do this, and this actually needs to be a var. And then here we need to say world.register layer.self world.register. I should probably add a okay, this way we can now do, wait, where's it gone? Here. Now we can just do this here and pickup.self. Okay, no, it doesn't like that. What did I do? Oh, I didn't make it public. Oh, I did. Oh, but it hasn't compiled. I can see that. Why? What have I missed? I have a syntax error somewhere. Well, that's wrong. I don't know why that's not, I think something else is not compiling for the, okay. Okay, there we go. So this allows us to basically, yeah, register each of our types so that the world knows about them. This is going to be important here. So because now we can say world dot entity, no, sorry, world. If we make this private set, but internal access, then because we're inside the thing here, we can grab this directly. It'll be a little bit easier. And so now we can make from a kind. And this is important because this approach here, which did know about entities, but is not going to work for us anymore. And so what we actually want to do here now, okay, is that we want to loop over, I don't know what to call it, I think it's marker, in world dot level markers. This has a kind. Okay, so this here becomes that. You see, and now we have, it's an optional entity, but that's fine. So we can do a guard else and then continue. This is internally, it'll tell us if we don't have, I believe. Let's just double check that. Yeah. So we'll know about it. But from here, from this perspective, we could just skip over it. Now we have an entity and we want to, that's essentially our spawn. So we want to say entity.id, is that right? I don't think I do have that. That's not true. Entity state. Oh, because it gets, that's a good point. So I previously needed to know about the IDs. This is not really true anymore. Okay, this is a good thing actually, obviously. A little bit frustrating right now because it's like a whole type with an int. So the way I'm going to do this is just sort of say ID int 0, and then here, well, I guess here defer ID plus equals 1. So essentially we create like an auto incrementing ID for now. This is not what we'll end up doing probably later on because the store should probably take care of this automatically. But it'll do for now. It'll suffice for now. Oh, and we need to wrap it up in this. But that should give us a state. Okay, that's good. And then I think we can do, now I think we can actually do all of that. Oh, and we just need to update this to be marker, and entity is, yeah, you need to be able to mutate that. Marker ID? No, what did I call it? Oh, just ID. Nope, doesn't like that. Spawn ID. That's not the one. What am I missing? Sorry. It was accepting an entity ID. Okay, so probably I just need to do that again. Yeah, okay. And then this can go. If we run that, I think that might actually work because it really isn't doing anything different. We've just moved things to a different location. Nice. Okay, that's cool. So we basically have, yeah, and then the camera now does not follow. It just stays fixed, which is correct because I took it away. um, so that's cool. I think actually, you know what, just because I would like to like maintain the game as it was, so to speak, um, I think it might make sense. Sorry, this is the new stuff. I want the old one. Why is it not showing me that? Is that the, oh, maybe that's the default then. Here, spawn, blah, 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 current entities. Oh, sorry. I'm in the wrong file. We want to be in game, in mood, sorry. There we go. Because this is where we set up the camera. So we basically want that. Um, where was I setting the camera now? Oh, I took it away, didn't I? Because we don't need it. But what's the position? World level tile map. I just don't, okay, let's just check it here. I don't remember the order of the, nope, it's not in there. Okay, I'm literally blanking where the camera was set up. Hang on, open this up. The world does not have a camera. That's correct. Oh, it's actually, wasn't it part of the level? It might be part of the level, but not this level, right? Okay, old level. Maybe I'm wrong. Tile map? I don't think so. No. Ah, this is where I wish I had chat so that somebody could shout out to me because I know I'm being an idiot. I'm completely blanking right now as to, okay, here we go. We initialized with a camera rig before. Okay. And then camera, oh, so camera rig is just set. Oh, okay. So, but the anchor for entity ID does not exist anymore. Correct. I think we just want to say this needs to anchor to the correct character, which we don't actually know anymore. So yay for that. Oh, okay. Well, then this is actually not possible to add right now because we don't have the same. The constraint should be possible though. I'm a bit, let me just do, sorry, just I want to write this out separately for a second. So camera viewport size is size, that's the same, that's absolutely fine. Entities, we want to anchor to the entities, entity ID, which is also fine, except that doesn't exist anymore. Although I am a little confused as to why that. Oh, it's not that it doesn't exist anymore, it's that the app, like the game knows about it, the engine does not. Um, so I think what we would want to do, hmm, I kind of want to read. I can't even do it from the markers because I don't know. I mean, I can and I can't. We can do it in a silly way. Um, oops. Oh, I don't even know about player.kind. Oh, because the engine doesn't know about a player either. Doesn't need a concept of that, so it doesn't know. Okay, well then, me being such a stupid not a genius like at all, I'm gonna do something silly and say uh, bounds. Oh, actually, this can come from bounds is here and just default to 0 because it should never actually be wrong. Uh, I don't think this is going to work because oh, okay, it does. Because I'm pretty sure I put player first. So it just happens to work. Or like give us back the thing. And it's constraining when I go up and down, it's not moving around because we constrained to the world bound. So this is actually working and this is correct for like, again, it's a hard-coded camera rig. Really, you want the camera rig, like I said, to come as a part of like the tile map or the level or something. Okay, so actually that is a good thing that we could think about adding right now. I'm sorry, wrong level. I'm still not 100% convinced on whether we should add a camera to the world or the level. I think the camera is like a view on the world, uh, like a view on the level, and therefore probably belongs on the world. I don't know if it really matters, honestly. But let's try this here. Okay, and then this should accept a camera rig. Oops, self.camera rig or camera, yeah. And then I think we should default it though. So we don't need effects or constraints. Actually, constraints would be good. Um, the default camera needs just a viewport size, and I don't think it has one. It doesn't. So the world does not have a viewport size because that's where your rendering comes in. Um, mm, this is where it gets a little tricky. I feel like I would want to. To be completely honest, I feel like I want this to be optional so it can default to nil. And what that would mean is there's no camera in a sense. But there is and there isn't, right? But I feel like by doing it that way, we can do something interesting here maybe. If we do what do we want to say? Self.camera rig is equal to camera. And then we just default it to this for now. Whoops. There we go. This allows us to override it at least. From here. So now you can say let camera is equal to yeah, I don't think that that's going to work directly because it needs the, I think this now changes the, well, in a good way actually, because it's more correct. And this can now just say player. So that's, yeah, that's probably good. And then here you can now say, oh, where did I add it? Level and then camera. Level and then camera, level and camera. I don't honestly know if I prefer that or not, but it's fine. Camera is camera. So if I do that, this should behave the same way. Oops. Yeah. And then if I pass nil here, what happens? Hopefully it just shows the scene. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's all right, because that's all right. I'm okay with that. So this at least gives us like the same behavior we had before. I don't know if that was actually the bounds though, leveled up bounds. It was. Okay, so this was actually, basically this is like exactly what was done before. So that actually seems like that's more correct now. Yeah, because only for now, because because level is the old level. So it's fine, but I think I want to move this. I don't know why I had that there. Just to keep it all together. Oh, sorry. Like that. This only gets read once for the entire game, so it's per platform as well. We do need the size to come out because I believe. Oh no, we don't actually. I don't know why I have no good answer for that decision. I know I did it, I just don't know why. And then let's do this. Okay. Run that again, just because I want to just get to a checkpoint so we can do a commit. Okay. Nice. Okay. Wraps game setup, or let's say wraps level and level camera and other scene related content into world level now. Let's push that. Okay, and I'm just gonna go back to, oops, sorry, too far. Yeah. Okay, so let's just quickly look at that again, so we know where this, because this hasn't really like improved things that much, and I'm just trying to establish some types. But we have a game size that's always going to be here. We have a level, which currently comes from old level, but this will load from like disk at some point. So this will give us the size, tile size, things like that. Not 100% sure about the tile size. I guess it depends on if I'm always tile based. You know, there could be some games that are a little bit more like absolute values. So that this could change, but that's fine. For now, that's fine. The camera rig, as we said, is the game. The game shouldn't really have like one camera, which it doesn't right now. The scene has one camera, so it just happens to be that we define this here. I think, I don't know if that will change really. But I mean, yes, and sorry, I'm trying to think aloud. My original idea for like a scene, um, was that you would create your own scenes and define what you want. Um, that's not really it's like the problem though is that we need certain things like the register function, for example. Like we need certain setup, and these are just things we know. So having a concrete type for this and level, for example, kind of just made more sense, at least for now. Um, Maybe some kind of like um, type that you create later on that allows you to wrap those things up would be nice. I'm not sure. Just from a like, I'm just thinking about how I want to like write these things out, um, and then work out how that would get read from a file in some cases. But like for example, let's say we create extension on world, static var. I'm just going to call this default for lack of a better name. So this actually maybe we should make default. I think is probably a better idea in this case. Anyway, so this essentially now can do all of that. Because this is a world definition, right? It's like it defines, actually, that's technically not, okay, so that's a good, uh, oh, I'm just realizing that's weird. It's kind of because of the tile map, although really that should just be like multiples of the tile size. So that's, I think that's my mistake from the very beginning, because that would have been like ages ago. But basically the world size can be bigger than the screen. Um, which it here it's allowing, we like literally setting it to 2 times that. But I think that was just like so I had a value that I can fill the screen with stuff. That's definitely not right. We should be like setting stuff out more explicitly, like, in the world. And then we want to know like the starting position, for example, like for the camera. But the viewport size, that comes from the resolution of the game, because that's fixed. So I would say what this should be is make default, and then we just pass the size here for now, so that this code still will compile. And then this becomes, get rid of all that, let world equal world dot make default in size. And then here we need to instantiate, as we need to obviously instantiate that. Okay. I think we can do that just to get rid of the extra line there. We need size twice, you see. I mean, this is, like I said, this is really wrong. If we get rid of size here, then this can actually go in line, and you can see that this gets nice and clean. Because the world, the world shouldn't care about that. So I'm going to use AI to clean that up, because there's probably a bunch of weird things going on there. Okay, so the way I would do this is I would go to this file here, because this has level 1 as well, which is also based on a similar thing. And so I'll copy this here. Okay, so this file defines 2 test levels. However, they're currently based on the world size, which they shouldn't be. A level's definition becomes its world size. The value passed here currently is the viewport size, but we shouldn't care about that. Instead, since this is a tile map based level, we should be using the tile size to place everything. Can you update the levels, just this file, to remove the world size from, remove argument, and make sure the resulting levels will still look the same. I'll update crawler code myself. So we'll let that fix this. And that means that we can just do that. And then this will get fixed in a minute. Yeah, but that means we can now remove that there. And we can do this directly and get rid of that. Okay, and it says it's done, but I don't think it is. Can't find size. Oh, for the camera, we still, at the moment, I don't know if that's required there. That's a good, let's check that. I get why the camera would need it, because yeah, this is a bit different because you may want the camera to see less of the actual level, right? Like, because there's a rendering, it's not the size of like your viewport actually, it's the size that the resolution or the area, I guess, the bounding box that you want to render as a part of the camera so that you can zoom in, zoom out and stuff like that. So that actually is required. It just happens currently to match this size. So I'll leave this annoyingly. I'm going to actually just put this out here so I don't muddy that one up, but let's do that. And then here we can say size. Okay. It's a small annoyance in this case, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, this way we can, this is just for the camera, but this should now work the same way. Yeah, there we go. And the level is horrible, but it does what we want it to do, which is fine. So this now is, yeah, it's good. All right. Level, well, I should say old level definitions no longer depend on viewport size. Good. All right. Yeah. I mean, one other thing I would say here is that we can change the origin to like really prove that this works, I guess. I actually do want, sorry, I'm just realizing, let me just make this like, I don't know, 128 and 0. The Y doesn't matter because we're, oh, that didn't work. I was expecting that to actually move across. Or it might not be far enough across if the, so what are we at, 800? Let's just put ourselves like at the other end. See if that works. Nope, that does not work. I think it's getting reset then. I think the origin must not actually get respected in the end because it probably gets updated with like the level loads or something like that. Because ideally you want to be able to set the camera to like an offset and like that becomes your initial view or whatever. Especially like if you moved your player or spawned your player in the middle of the map, you should be able to start in the middle of the map, right? So the viewport bounds is for that. I think I'm just only just now sort of realizing this, but oh, excuse me, don't know why I'm yawning. Might need a coffee in a minute. I think that you might want, it might make more sense. I'm kind of realizing, I mean, I don't know if this is just me, but I'm kind of realizing as I've been building this out that more often than not, I want a center point rather than an origin. And then size makes sense for like the viewport, right, for the resolution of the game itself. But then you kind of, I think, just want to scale, right? You want to sort of say, oh, I need a scale of one, and that's going to be therefore matching the viewport, because then it's easier to zoom in, zoom out, because you just add a multiplier. If I want to be twice as, see half the map, I want a scale of 2. And so that becomes just really natural to, I think, or more intuitive to reason about. If you do need to like calculate like a specific frame or a specific size, right? That's okay. I see the value maybe of size, but I think again you can still do the math and see, so you can still calculate exactly what scale value you need to get to that size. I think where the only place I can see a bounds being more useful, so you probably want the ability to define both, I guess. But it, for example, is the split screen multiplayer I talked about earlier in the stream, because you'd want to be able to space, to be more. That's not a scale in that case, but mostly because your aspect ratio is no longer going to match the viewport, right? You're actually going to have something tall. If you're doing horizontal, for example, you're going to have a vertical layout for your viewport, for your camera, sorry. But the game is still in its original resolution. So yeah, I think there could be a good reason to have size still. But maybe, I guess what I'm thinking is I would just like to add a convenience for that, because yeah, most of the time, at least, the way I think about this is, if I want to create a game, like a prototype or an idea, and I want to just do it quickly, I just want to reduce how many of these like little things that are a bit boilerplate and annoying and complicated to think about. And so you want to have the flexibility for those things, but also make it really, really easy to just keep building games. And right now we're just trying to get to a point where we can actually build a game. So I'm not going to make these changes right now, but I'm just, speaking aloud, I guess, of like things that are crossing my mind. Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break. I need to go to the toilet and get a coffee. Uh, Again, no one's watching, so I can do what I want. But if you watch this later, um, time for you to take a coffee. I'll be back in 5. I mean, you can always skip across. Um, all right. I'll see you back in 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Um, uh, hope if anybody ever watches this, I hope you're enjoying your coffee. I tell you what, this is my favorite coffee. It's it's a caramel flavored bean, and my sister-in-law sends it to me from Germany because I've not been able to find anything as close to this in London, believe it or not. Probably I just haven't looked hard enough, but it is amazing. Uh, just realizing I didn't reconnect my mic here. Sorry if that made a noise. Okay. Um, all right, let's go back into some code. So, okay, so we have a concept of a world that wraps up a level, a camera, and markers. And they're still programmatic and coming from the original definitions, but that's fine. Um, I think the way this will work later is a little bit different. In fact, I'll leave that for now. I'm thinking that the way that this will work later is like assets need to be derived from usage in the map. The tile map, obviously, if there's a tile map provided and been loaded, then that needs to come in, and markers as well. Somehow would be nice to define the camera there as well, so that there's no extra special handling. And that essentially would mean that this entire thing would come from a file. And you wouldn't need any of that directly. So this would literally simplify to like world is equal to world with a URL, right? For example. You'd still need to add the registrations for the individual types because, and I don't think there's any way around that anytime soon. Um, the only way I can think of doing that potentially, because the world doesn't like, so you need to do this and like register these types kind of with the game. Actually, now that I think about it, they're not really world specific because a player is going to exist on multiple scenes and enemy and pickups as well. Um, so actually, it doesn't make as much sense for those to get registered here. Um, and so what I'm thinking is you probably need to write, like you have to, I don't know, I guess like pre-register all of the types for each of your like player character, you know, whatever. Um, hmm. And then your world needs to then just be able to reference them. Uh, but it's going to register them with the kind, right? Like with the string. So yeah, I mean, we don't really have like that kind of like dynamic. What I'm kind of thinking about is the reason for doing this is so that one, you have an entity you can instantiate that's of the right type. Now, in a real game engine, they don't exactly work that way. A game engine normally an entity would be something really simple, right? Like an integer. And so it has no problem to create a new entity, first of all. Um, the properties that you would have that you generally need access to, like for example, the position and the, excuse me, the position and the velocity and stuff like that exists on, I don't know where they necessarily store that. It's probably some kind of like component layer. For me, I just store them as properties on the entity right now. But all of that's fine. And I can do all of that as well right now because entity state is a engine thing that is well understood. What's trickier is how I tell you about it, right? So at the moment, we have this concept of a player, that needs to be something, we need something that we can say, oh, for players, I want this type, and therefore I want you to call prepare on update and on collision, right? And so basically what we're talking about here is that this registration here is kind of equivalent to like in a game engine when you attach a script to like a player or whatever. So I think it's okay. I think like it feels like an extra layer or thing that I have to do. Um, but I don't, I would imagine every game does that. So I'm probably feeling like this is like I'm probably over engineering or over designing because in my head I'm like, oh, how can I get rid of any boilerplate code that. But probably this is like just a thing you always do. And if you're working in editor, programmatically, this would happen for you, right? I mean, that's another thing, by the way. I actually, not at all for now, but another thing I was thinking about is that I could use AI at some point to create a very simple level editor, something that really looks like this, um, and particularly for tile maps where it's just like a grid. As I move my mouse over, I can just click and like place walls and markers, whatever, um, and have that not generate like a JSON file, but actually have it generate Swift code, because that would be, or it could be an intermediary format if that made sense, but also having some script or whatever that converts that to actual static Swift. That way we don't actually need necessarily any like loading of levels like at runtime. We can actually statically define them and compile them in, which could be cool. The other reason I thought that could be nice though, potentially, is that it could then wrap up the code that registers the world and stuff like that. So we'd have like, I don't know, a file that it generates, and that file would like have every world definition, whatever, as well as a extension or something like for registering all the types once across all the worlds. It's kind of like basically the idea I had it because I was thinking about in Swift development, or iOS, Mac OS development. Um, Xcode has this a feature if you have a full Xcode project where you can, for example, add like assets for images, colors, stuff like that. But it actually does like a little code gen in your build as well. So if you were to go to like let's say you've added a color and you've called it rainbow, you can actually just do color.rainbow, or I think the API is like on an initializer, but either way, you can do this instead of having to define it as a string. And this gets automatically like generated. This code is auto-generated. And I thought that would be kind of interesting to look at later on. So maybe this is like something where I'm overthinking it right now, because I could use AI to create a nice little tool that makes that a little bit more visual and also easier. My perfect like scenario, by the way, would be to have the editor be in the game. So like this is the game. Maybe at some point I can just press a key that switches to like this to an edit mode, and I can place and move things around live. Um, so in that case, I think it probably would need to be some kind of text file that we can read in, but there could still be a tool that then converts that. Uh, Yeah, I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think like when you're authoring on the Mac, I'm not thinking that the in-game editor makes as much sense on like every device, but at least when I'm editing like on my Mac, for example, or like if I was on Windows, like a desktop, basically, to be able to like run the game and see a mistake, or I want to change like a parameter or whatever, to be able to like edit that live and test it out, and then also, well, potentially test it out, and then be able to like, even if I can't, maybe I can like make changes to the level, but maybe I can't modify certain properties, and then I need to like rerun the game. Hot reloading would solve a lot of that as well. But actually, reloading would be more ideal, because you'd recompile the binary and then just relink it. This is definitely something you can do on Mac and Windows. But the big question there is, how I would need to change how the package setup is done right now. And it's definitely way out of scope today, I would say. Um, I would say once I have a game and I've written the first game, I can sort of see where some of those bottlenecks are, or those just pain points, and then I can think about how to resolve those, especially if AI can speed up some of that so that I don't have to spend days working it out. Um, okay, I think that's enough of a coffee break and chat. Right, so we have a world. Let's go into the world here. We have registry, we have levels. Okay. Again, what we've done now is we've wrapped it up in a world, which is cool, but limited benefit, especially because right now we still in the game itself. Here we go. We're still storing camera rig, which is optionally already on world. Sprite assets. We have the scene assets, so that's not really okay. So I think what we can do is take these out. I think sounds is required for a different purpose. So we'll leave that for a minute because that's not being instantiated here anyway. I think that's per frame. That's actually a good point. There's a render frame, which is really great. But I introduced that concept last week, I think. Um, what I don't have is like the concept of just a frame and like wrapping up all of the things that are actually it's not entirely true. So a context, a game context, this actually is basically what I'm what I'm just describing. It represents a specific frame, the inputs for that frame, the delta for that frame, what level you're currently on, which is just contextual. And then it has some local properties like the sounds that need to play as a part of that frame, the current render context, which is just used for drawing, and then like the collision system, which is used for movement, and any contacts that are occurring right now. So basically, it's the current state of that current frame. So I think that maybe this should be renamed frame, um, or game frame, because that would make, well, it's already named space to game. Yeah, so frame. But I think that would make a lot more sense than calling it a context now. Because that is, it's sort of, yeah, frame context. Okay, this is where it gets confusing. This because I forgot about that. The render context I've called frame context. It's the frame for the renderer. So it's all the commands that have been logged for that specific frame. And then I can't remember because these are the same type. I just don't remember why. Why is that one used? Ah, I think I might have renamed and forgot to remove the old one. I'm not sure. Oops. Both of these. That's like a small thing that you might think that is irrelevant for AI, but honestly, I found that it like affects the quality um, of the response if I'm not a little bit more careful. Render context is the final frame render list. A frame context is temporary per update. Output from entity callbacks. Oh, right. It's not clear that, but so entities can imperatively draw during. Yeah. So basically, that's right. So I basically wanted an API where I can do like sort of immediate mode drawing, but then I want to also have batching. So I essentially decided I'll create like a frame or context that allows me to like log commands, but at the end you want to like have a thing, an immutable thing. It's not technically immutable because it's a var, but it's somewhat of an immutable. I guess it's more of a copy. And then, Swift UI, they're all structs. Swift UI kind of handles. It's not Swift UI. Swift handles that, so I don't really know why I felt like I needed to split them like that. Actually, um, I think the reason I'm not convinced is because they would both need to be drained. So at the beginning of this I know this gets called per frame. So we want to rebuild the sprite buffer. We remove the basically the previous frame's render context. And we do it this way, by the way, we do it this way so that we can reuse storage as much as possible, which is also why we keep capacity. You could imagine, like, if you weren't thinking in terms of like a hot loop, you could imagine that you, like a cleaner way to do it, right, would be that you just create a whole new instance, but then you'd be allocating arrays every frame. So that's the reason that I'm using this approach. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it works. And it reduced the allocations significantly. So we clear out all of the current context. So we say, yep, we don't know what we're going to render next. Excuse me. We then append all the tiles that are in the visible bounds, and then the sprites, so like the player or enemies, stuff like that. But then we capture, this is the thing that's to me a little bit interesting. I see here that we then append all of the commands that are in the frame context. So those would be, I guess, the draw commands. From what AI is saying. And then this is just a thing that I added, that's fine. Then we sort the commands so that we can prepare for so we know how we can batch. So that if something's in front or on top or whatever, that changes what we're able to do for batching. Then we generate the batches and stats, which is for profiling purposes. So, okay, hang on. Sorry. Something's stuck under my mouse. Oh, ton of dust suddenly. Where's that coming from? Okay. Um, was that the only references, by the way, to well, not the only reference, but is that frame? Yeah, the rest is just passed in. Here is the oh, so that's so the game context maintains its own render context for all of the drawing anyway. So what? Okay, hang on, wait a minute. That's now that's a bit more interesting. So go back here. Wait, was it this one? Sorry, just make sure we're compiling so that we can work out what I've missed. Okay. Where is that one used? Frame context. So in every update method, we clear it out. And that's it. Oh, yeah, because append frame commands. So we clear out that context. We then generate a game context, which is good. Like we said, it's going to have its own thing. And then we append all of those for every entity. We append all of the entity context from that. So that's going to basically what that's going to do is grab all of the draw commands per entity into a single type. But still, at this point, I don't see why that couldn't be done. And then we go to rebuild sprite here. And this line here would be a problem if we wanted to use just the render context, because we would clear the stuff before we need to actually render it. But I actually don't know why that would need to happen. It seems to me, okay, hang on, wait, like, I noticed rebuild sprite buffer clears render context first. What's the reason for that? I don't remember. Because if we instead cleared at the end or at the beginning of the next, or of the update method instead, we could simply reuse the frame buff, the frame context. No, sorry, use a single render context across everything. I don't see why we need to, oops, push back if this is missing key details. Also, I wanted to just mention, we have the render context and the frame context. What was I thinking? Render commands is fine. Oh, also I noticed game.context creates its own temporary render context anyway. I'm also not sure why we'd want to allocate more storage per frame here. I mean, this works, by the way. It's fast enough. I'm just thinking about maintainability, not trying to make it like more efficient. I think what's happened here is that I've written stuff. AI's come and added some stuff for me as when I've like with pieces of work that I've asked it to do. And one of the things that I don't like with AI often, which is why I wanted to write this in Swift that I understand deeply, is that I would catch stuff like this, because I think sometimes AI will try not to mess up your code, and the approach it takes for doing that is messing up your code, because it essentially will introduce, you know, duplication. And I don't know if this is true in other languages, by the way, but I know this is true of like junior programming in Swift and like iOS, and the training data is heavily based on that. I mean, to me, this is like very obviously bad engineering. A senior engineer would never do this. Or, sorry, I shouldn't say that. You might, but you would know exactly why you're doing that. And there are trade-offs and times where it might make sense. But I think like in this project, given how like small the code base is and how new it is, yeah, I don't think a senior engineer would make that kind of decision. So I think I'm always a bit confused when AI is doing that. And I have had better experience in other languages. So I think that this is a little bit of a Swift thing, but maybe not. Maybe it's actually just a, you know, you need to have really, really strong review on the code, and you also need better like agents, files, and like skills and all that kind of stuff. But I have pretty decent setup right now, so I don't know why this has exactly happened. Anyway, uh, rebuild sprite buffer clears the render context because render context represents, yes, I know why. Tiles plus ND sprites plus, okay, it must be rebuilt from scratch, yes. If I, I know this, the reason clearing it is awkward is what the platform reads after update. Clear at end means the public render output disappears unless platform already consumed batches synchronously, which it does, I think. There's no async code. We're single threaded. Clearing at the beginning of update could work, but only if all final assembly happens after gameplay update. Current entity callbacks can draw while update collision is running. Current entity callbacks can draw. So this is if you get like an update or a on collision, they can draw while it's running. This is true. Although I did notice that here, but I think that stuff's done because I think this is last. Is this oh, sorry, that's not the right one. Inside here, this is the update method. So in the update method, we detect contacts. This is the collision detection. Then we call end frame. This does a similar thing in here for like detecting. It's basically a similar cache, but specific for contact decisions. And then here, dispatch collisions. So this is the thing I wrote that basically calls here entity on collision. This will call that method for each of the entities that are relevant to this. Like the two contacts, if they, well, no, it depends. But like if I'm a player and I have registered to like know about when I hit a pickup, then I'm going to get an on collision call here, which is correct. At the end of this calls append frame commands from the entity context. So this is basically those like draw. If I've done any draw commands, then I would have updated my entity context and inside that method, and then therefore this will do what it does. I think that's not necessary, or it's wrong, because we pass we don't actually pass a context, dispatch collisions. This is game context, right? Which is a struct. Which is fine. Okay, this takes an in. Okay, I think that part of the issue here is that this essentially will be a copy. This then calls a method that mutates like with an in out, which is great, and then we need to like reattach whatever. This is a bit silly. I mean, I don't know if I wrote that. I might have. I think that might have been me. That code. Oh, I think in this case we should be using an in out, so that we can mutate in line. Performance is usually better for that anyway, but then that way we just pass the context all the way down. Okay, I think I'm starting to get the right picture here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not worried about that. Just trying to keep it thinking about the right thing. Yes. Let's take an example. I'm just thinking about the collisions. I can't think straight. What's impact for collision detection? Because the thing with collision detection is sometimes like you want to know where a collision is going to occur. So you technically know if they keep moving forwards, you're going to hit the wall, and then you stop it before that. That way they land on it rather than going through it. Um, and I think that's the way I've implemented it. We snapshot entities. Yeah. Where are we? Here. Um, it's not exactly true because we made it. We used to do that. I'm not sure if it's looked at the code there and seeing something I'm not seeing because we did have that. That's true. But we moved to using the entity store, and the store is not a struct; it's a class. And then we access everything like in like usually through this like for each, for example, so that we mutate what's in the storage rather than copying it. Uh, where are you? Well, actually, is it showing it there? Hang on. When the context is created, the collision system snapshots entities. No, it passes by reference. Okay. Collision system passes entity store, which is a reference type, not a snapshot. I think it's just not correct for this one. Question, does detect answer here? This is what I was wondering. Does detect contacts see entity positions after on update? I see it does know that it's okay. Um, yeah, this is what I was wondering, but it's not stale because we store like the underlying. Okay, good. So we'd create a contact. I'm still not necessarily agreeing on that part actually, but for entity update, then detect contacts, dispatch sounds, then context becomes the frame accumulator for sound. Yeah, yeah, and this is what I'm talking about. Benefits on per, sorry, no per entity temporary or in context. Sounds don't need separate frame sounds. That's a very good point because it's really annoying at the moment that I store that stuff separately. Collision callbacks can write into the accumulator, clear a lifetime, one context per frame. Should be unchanged if it continues reading entity store, which it would, but this design makes the coupling more obvious. Context is created before movement, then detects contacts after movement. Um, I think that makes sense, detect after movement. Later on, but I don't think we need to worry about that now. Caveat, context is passed into entity code. If one shared is passed through every entity, an entity can affect shared frame output. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's already semantically true, just currently hidden behind merging copies. I mean, it's kind of what you want though, because if you always had, I mean, I don't know if we actually exposed anything like this right now, but at some point, it's common in a game engine to sort of deal a little bit more globally. Like you want to be able to query for another entity, and then that entity, um, you might want to change something about it as a part of your, script or whatever. So I think that that's okay. I mean, I think that's necessary, unless that's referencing something else. I mean, it is a little bit from an app developer point of view. It's like a big concern to think about, like, mutable state and stuff like that. I think in a game engine, for what we're doing here, I think is correct. It still wants to create a context. Oh, but that context is a game context. So that's fine, actually. That makes sense, believe it or not. The only thing I see being a problem with that is I think context is currently constructed. No, it's okay. It does have. So then okay, good. That's fine. Yeah, okay. No, but it does have here the render like its own render context. So I mean, it's kind of, yeah, you could do an append or a move here, but then I I feel like this is kind of just already, it like allocates a new array for the commands as well. Like, so it's a bit bizarre, I guess is the right way to say it. Um, Regarding, which one is it? Game.context. It stores its own render context as well. This means every frame we're creating a new one at the moment. And this is separate to the other two already. I'd like to, ideally, again, we shouldn't do this. It'd be my preference to have one render context per frame, not per frame, sorry, exclusively. Then every frame, the game.context, the entities via game.context, append, etc. And probably beginning of next frame, auto clears, keeping capacity. Let's get the AI's thoughts on that. Exactly, we have 3 concepts right now, and this is very, very. I think the reason there's 3 right now is because of these 2. Because this context here is accumulating draw commands from like some locations. The render context on the game context, God, his naming is getting crazy. This is essentially accumulating per entity per frame, not per entity. But it does not contain this stuff. And so I think what's happening is that it wanted to have a final frame that captures both. But I think using one solves that problem and makes this a lot simpler. Yes, correct. Yep. Frame assembly, sort and batch. Yep. From reads. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It has to happen at the beginning. Ordering right now, final order before sort is the tiles entity sprite. It's not entirely true because tiles can appear in front of an entity via layers. So I have to check that in a second. debug, sort by layer. Oh, okay, it adds that now. Right. Okay, so it grabs all the tiles, then I see what it's saying. Then it like we render or define we add commands, I should say, for all the sprites. Then any gameplay emitted frame command. So this is like on the in those update and on collision methods. And then there's debug stuff, which is temporary. And then we sort by layer and stable within the layer. If entity callbacks append directly during the update, then later, what? If entity callbacks like update append directly during update, then later appends tiles as the debug after them. Because, I mean, I get that, but gameplay embedded commands. So this is like an update method on player. It's saying that that would happen before. I think this should happen, should probably, or should probably always occur after tiles sprites. Why would that not be possible? Why would we change the order? Because it's saying, I don't know if it's just asking me to, if I want to do that, is odd. It would be easier to reason about this way. So if I care about preserving same layer order options, append world render commands before entity updates, correct? Bad, why? Because entity state camera is not final yet. Uh, why would that not be? I mean, you could, technically, I guess you could move the camera if that's what it's talking about. Keep a tiny phase order field in more machinery. No. What? No. Accept new order. Probably fine for now, especially if layers are used intentionally. I mean, layers are, but then within a layer you have. You can't really reason about that right now, actually. Like, which enemy ends up on top, for example. It's probably something I have to think about at some point, but I don't at the moment. I forgot about frame output. No, I don't have frame output actually. That's It's suggesting something new. Okay, I see. Oh, I see, because that's basically okay. That's what I want to call frame. Um, so yes, I pushed remove from context, remove from context, remove. Okay, we need a little bit more alignment here, and then we might be ready for this to do the first round of it. This is definitely one for AI to do, because it'll be something good to review, but like I don't think I want to sit here and code that all up. I do understand what I want though. So you're right, I've said that trade-off. We can preserve current ordering with one, if we split recording from final assembly conceptually, but still use same buffer. One buffer do. Yeah, exactly. I don't know why it overstated the trade. Okay. So update starts, we removed everything, yeah. Gameplay, context.draw needs to append somewhere logically frame commands. Yes, that's where the frame comes in. Did it suggest that frame is a class? Yeah, because frame would need to be a class so that we can pass around the reference. That makes sense. If we were multi-threaded or like worried about stuff like that, then this would not be the safest idea. We'd have to think much more carefully. But the loop is single thread, so it should be okay. After update collision, append tiles, append entity sprites, append gameplay commands. Yeah. Sort and batch. If draw appends directly into one buffer drawing gameplay, then those commands are already physically first. I don't understand why it thinks that that's going to happen. I do not understand this. I'm still not following you on this. Why can't we just add tile currently in the loop, in the update loop, in the update, I should say. Let's go to update, this one. Actually, we're just real quick, when does the update camera get called? It gets called at the moment at the end. I think the reason for that, yeah. So it's probably to do with the entity, to do with the anchoring. So I think I understand now. So We move, we apply a velocity and that moves our character. We detect collision, which may also move the character like back out or what, whatever. Um, and then that tells us where the camera should move in that scenario. And so basically, what I think what it's suggesting is that camera cannot be updated. So let me see if this is specific to camera. Is this entirely about camera? For example, a player moves, but then maybe a collision. So collision system also moves the player. For anchoring, we need this updated state before we can update camera. Is that the gist? And is this purely about camera? Because I don't see how it's relevant to the draw commands necessarily. I mean, it is, except I don't think that we pay attention to that from a draw order point of view. Entity updates mutate entity state, yes. So this is like player says, go and move. Collision may perform further mutation, correct. Camera updates from the final state, correct. The visible bounds is then derived from the camera, correct. Okay, that's an important part. And then tile entities selected from visible bounds. Oh, tile and entities are selected from visible bounds. Oh, okay, I see now. Because I was, oh, because they're mostly like known. I was thinking about it wrong. I was imagining we already know the level, so we can draw those things first, and then we basically draw the other stuff, or we allow the other things to change that stuff. But if the camera, if the camera's not, if the camera state has not been determined yet, then we do not know which tiles and entities and whatever we actually want to render. So there's a difference here between, so basically we've got like the state of the things, right? Where is everything and the current bounds. And then from that, calculating what we actually want to render. But the problem is that we can call draw. I think that's all actually. So is the only problem really that we support draw commands, oops, which can be called in one. If so, we could remove those for now. Because I had an idea to use them, and I'm not actually using them right now. That is the core blocker. If entities cannot admit, then one render becomes straightforward. Exactly. Because I understand the state needs to be up to date first. Yeah, this is the thing that I was thinking about later. So I added like a, it's more like probably for maybe like particle system or something like that. Um, temporary UI world indicators. I mean, those could be represented by entities as well. maybe particle system, you just add an entity. So then you can do any drawing you want in that entity. Yeah, I mean, it even suggested likely as explicit transient entities. I think that's the right way to do it. Yes, I imagine we'd make things entities and this problem goes away. My idea to have immediate mode drawing was likely not such a good idea. Can't think of the phrase for the word that I want to use there, but yeah, I agree for this game. Making the entities clearer, blah blah. Okay. Okay, so we have a single frame, then we've got render commands. Then you've got render batches and stats, that's fine. A frame owns a context. Is that no, this is wrong. Oh, actually, it is talking about doing. Okay, sorry, I just reread what it's suggesting. So it would make it a struct, and then we have mutation on it. So that's fine. That actually is good because it removes like sendability concerns as well. But a single frame has a render context, which I think makes sense. Let me just double check now what render context represents, because if that doesn't need to do the drawing anymore, because that's mostly what that was for, it has the commands really only. If we're removing draw stroke commands for now, commands from render context, then the context really just represents commands. Should we just store those directly on frame instead? Yeah, exactly. Sort commands can own commands directly. Yeah, sort commands and builds the frame. append tile sprites. Oh, I see. This is just to do this though. I mean, they already were you can see here that they really are not very complicated. They're just applying like the most of the code's already in this, which also I guess sucks, but that's just how it works. So uh, and the entity sprites as well. Yeah, I mean, most of the draw, like most of the code for tiles sprites is already in game, and the context is just providing indirection unnecessarily. So I'd just move the code directly into game for those, at least for now. I see zero reason to keep render context at all. And I don't like the idea of moving draw methods onto frame. It's the wrong responsibility now. Yeah, I mean, they're not helpers at functionality, but yes. Uh, it wants to add a frame.begin, which I guess I agree with. I 100% agree with, but I would like to have a explicit life cycle then for an end. But it already does that. um, hang on a second. Sort. Okay, it's kind of pushing against me, and I get why. It's just trying to capture the idea of a reset. I think begin implies we need life cycle, but so maybe a better term here would be frame.prepare. No need to pass any args. I don't want it to add the It did it up here as well. Oh, I deleted it, but like it was the keeping capacity stuff. Sometimes it wants to do like to maintain, I guess, configurability, which is a bit in this case not there's no point to it. We always want that. um, it's just repeating what I said, but it's fine. Yep, correct shape. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're aligned. Go and make the changes. All right, let's let that run. While that's doing that, can't make, well, we shouldn't, I don't like making changes while it's doing stuff, and it's pretty quick, so. But what I would say is we can just look through, this is a little bit off track from where we started, which is fine, because I really, like when I see these opportunities to clean up stuff, I want to make sure I do them. I'm not really, everyone's going to have a very different opinion on this. I am of the opinion that if I see something and I know that it's either harder to maintain or more confusing, like to read and understand later on, even if I wrote the code, or if there's like an obvious performance uh, consideration and I know a solution already that's not too big, I would prefer to make that change now rather than wait. And lots of other people will, not some people would call that pre-optimization, or premature optimization. There are times where that's true, so I do balance it, but I would say I typically build, like the way I build, I have, in my experience, and we're talking about 30 years of experience, it has led to higher quality software over a longer period. Like it scales better and it stabilizes earlier. And I think that a lot of that has to do with that approach. So, not that I write perfect code and don't have bugs, but I think like I don't have this silly, stupid little, obvious bugs. And I think also the reason I like doing like this kind of fix is not so much about performance. This is more about maintainability. I think that lesson came much more from like doing so much open source, because you have that problem where like you're not, especially in the early days, you weren't really always documenting your code and or having even tests, so it was hard for like someone else to come along and understand how something works. So trying to make the code base much more implicit or explicit if possible, I prefer that. I tend to think a lot more in terms of design with stuff like that. So that's now done. Let's have a look at what it's created then. So there's some input stuff which I'd like to fix later on. This is a bit messy, but we can ignore that. So here's the frame. This should compile, but you see, because AI made the change, Xcode's not picking up that file. So I need to restart Xcode. It's only happening since I updated though. I never had, excuse me, I never had this problem before. So I'm pretty sure it's related to the beta, but I could be wrong. All right, so here we go. Frame is in the renderer. It has just command sounds and a prepare method. Super simple, because it's really just the current state. That's a good thing. Okay, and then here we've got frame dot prepare. Is it at the end of the, oh, sorry, no, it's not. It's, oh, no, that's the initializer. There we go. So at the beginning. So at the beginning of the next frame, or beginning of every frame, it will clear out any existing state. Contacts, then begins frame. This is, I think this is another one that's actually, oh no, this actually does have an end frame, so I take it back, but it's fine. I'm going to actually change that though to be begin and end, because I don't like having, I know that that's maybe, some people would disagree, say that that's more explicit, that it's a frame level begin end, but that's dependent on where you use it. Oh, what did I just do there? I don't think I did that. Like I think I did, but I think I probably hit like a keyboard shortcut that duplicated the line. Okay, that was confusing. Right, so this is all fine. So then we we call begin, for frame, we call begin for context. We generate a context. This is true, we were doing this before, but the question now is what is inside of context? So let's open this up over here. This should not have, I believe. Oh, okay. It does have like the context state created again and again. So this is another thing to look at because that's going to generate a dictionary, an array, and two sets every frame. Collision system is passed, and I believe collision system is it's we are storing it there though as a struct. So yeah, and this will get instantiated. So the collision system is another one where I think the reason for that is because it's really just methods, but it does actually have, you know, like the collider index. Like some of this stuff was there. It's only just passing along, but obviously this is it's not actually. I was about to say it's copy by it's a copy on write, but that's not true actually because like the tiles here, for example, it's not true because one of like we end up allocating all the way down, but also because the way that the tiles work, like we already know we should be generating them once and just reusing them, right? So it's a game level thing. They don't change like in game. Or if they did, it would be the entity that should change, not the original tile map. So yeah, that's probably not correct. Okay, we got a lot of stuff to clean up there eventually, but right now the game's running very nice and fast and all the rest of it. So these are just opportunities for later. The main thing I want to clear up was just duplication, not performance. So frame begin, context begin, generate a context, and we do not pass a frame, which is correct. Entity records. I don't think this works because frame isn't doing anything yet. And there's no code. Oh, huh? I'm missing something here. Rebuild frame. Oh, okay. There we go. Did I just not see? Okay, okay. No, I mean, it has the commands there, but I was expecting to see some methods, I guess. So hang on, frame.commands.append probably. Let's see. Oh, I meant to close this side. So, okay, so it's just literally doing it in line. This is basically what we told it to do, so that's fine. So if we want to like append a sprite, or I'm assuming shapes here, appends path. There we go, appends path. Yeah, so essentially we're just doing everything in line, which is absolutely fine for now. It's a little bit out of scope, I think, for like the game. You know, this file's getting 300-400 lines now and has quite a lot of stuff in there, so it's definitely needs a little bit of thinking, but that's okay. Dispatch collisions is fine. Update. Here we go. Sorry, I just want to go back to this update method. So we go through every entity. We fetch the current entity, and then we update the state based on that entity ID. Still think that's a weird way of doing it. This feels to me like I said this before about the entity record. Like I just don't understand here why we wouldn't do. Oh, the only thing I can think of is if entity state does not store the. No, it does store an entity ID. So I think that there's like an old thought there. So if we said here and say store, entity store, but it's not stored on that. I think it's on the context. On um, game entity states. Oh, okay, that's why. Right, so index in entity states dot. Okay, Okay. Okay, it's fine. I might need to make this like a proper, oops, uh, like a collection type, but we store them by ID, right? Which is also fine as well, to be honest. So here, let's for a second, let's make this internal and private set. So now we can just do this, right? We can access by key instead of index. And that means that we can grab entity states.entities by ID key. Oops, I should say state is equal to this. I'm pretty sure that's an entity state. Oh no, that's that's the actual entity. Interesting. Entity records. Okay, but even then, I would just expect to do that. The optionality is a little bit annoying, but it's fine. It shouldn't never actually be. I probably need to. Can I do it? Oh, I think I can just do continue. And then here we want to say entity states dot update. I mean that's another thing. Like, so here you've got like this entity update, whatever, and I've just remembered that we have like the for each collider. We could also do like a for each entity here, entity state, I should say, because you have the ID. I actually don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that this is like really confusing to me. It's already on the dictionary. You could just do this actually for key value in entity states. Oops, entity states. Dot like that. And then here we can say entity states dot update if we want to still use this API, at least for now. But now you can do, sorry, just key, and you already know you've got the actual state here. So now you can actually do state dot on update, right? No, entity states dot update key state. Oh, sorry. You still want the actual entity. It's for each entity. I think what my problem is that entity store I think should store like entities by ID and then sorry, state by ID, but then also probably the actual entity. The basic difference is that entity state is like a piece of state that represents a given entity, right? It's the backing data essentially. And then you have like the live instance so that you can call methods on it, which you can think of like the script in an engine, right? If you're using Godot, for example, you can attach a script. Sorry, I'm thinking over here, but you want to be able to like attach a script to your entity so that you can get callbacks and do, move the player and detect collisions and things like that. So you don't really want your state to handle that, which is sort of like components, I guess. And then you do need like your actual entity instance that was actually created though. But I feel like what right now, I don't like the fact that they're in two different places. So you've got entity records on game, and you've got entity store also, I think, on game. Yeah, entity states, entity records. So I think this is like the next one to take a look at. So that's running, does the same thing it did before. Yep. looks good. Detection, contact phase. Yep. Okay. So everything's great. Looks good. All the behavior is the same. And I might have so let's just do a quick code review so we make sure that we're happy with the result. Start from the top. I call begin and end. Fine. This was my little change just now. That can go away. Okay, so we've deleted all of that and boiled it down to frame. Much nicer. Render commands. I don't know if we really need to keep, sorry, render commands as a, it's not even in use. I didn't think so. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. Oh, that is true? Because I was just thinking it's public, it's probably used by, how is that not used? That's actually really confusing. Frame.commands. Because of course. So we used to use them directly by the platform layer. It would read those commands and then know how to like execute the rendering. Now though, we sort, as you can see, we sort the frame commands and then we generate render batches, and those, if we check render batches, they should be, oh, even they're not actually, they're public. I don't know why. Those don't need to be public. If they're not called by the platform code, they do not need to be public. So if I run that again, I mean, it's compiling, so it should be fine. Yeah. So it's not, they definitely don't need to be public. Why? I mean, I'm glad if they don't need to be public. I'm just not sure. So that's the render frame. Because I'm going to guess we're using something else. Huh. The render planner. Yeah. That still doesn't seem to be, it's all in mood. Oh no, there it is. Yeah, there it is. Sorry, I just had to extend it. Yeah. So there we go. So basically the platform layer deals with like the render planner and prepared batches, not the other one was it called render batch? I think I called it. Yeah. So the render batch is like, yeah, it's different because you may prepare like a bunch of batches and then you go through and sort stuff and you might need to re-prepare those for like blend modes and things like that. So essentially I had to create like two different representations of those things. Okay, I really do need to go through at some point and like change the scoping for some of these things because I think it had this the AI changed some of them when I asked it to like document stuff, and then also like some code obviously I got it to write. And again, I'm happy with the code itself for the most part, but there are some exceptions like this where like the scoping is not really ideal because it tends to like see some public API and then it's like, oh, I'll make everything public. It doesn't ask the intelligent questions when it comes to that. So we want to add frame. Whoops, that was an accident. Add frame. Let's go back to the review now. So I removed public access there. That's good. It removed those draw functions because we're not using them. And then it updated the docs. It's correct. Nice. Okay. Oh, sorry. Unifies draw commands. Yeah. Into a new frame type. And sounds as well, actually, but mostly what we care about right now is that. Let's see. Oh, I like that. Yeah, stored. I think I would probably call it a runtime entity, but um, yeah, this is exactly right. It's common in a game engine to store both, or like to store optimized representations. In this case, yeah, you store like the indices, so you can like look up an ID, get the entity, the index, and then just look it up straight there. Yeah, 01-ish, correct. Um, what's that? I love the idea, but maybe we call it runtime entity. Um, Also love the idea of the store having um, entities. Oh, okay, it didn't. The idea of storing indices for faster lookup, like yeah, so say 01 lookup. Um, but I want this to be entities runtime entity, and this would be indices by ID. Yeah, that's fine. Um, remove record or entity record, I think it's called. Another abstraction isn't helpful here. Game and other code should still use API on the store and deal with existing types, not expose internals of the store. I don't disagree with that. Um, because this is an existential. I don't know if that's true anymore. I actually don't remember. Um, let's make the changes and see what the compiler says. Do not handle this without discussion first. I Oh, I think I'm gonna have to head off soon. I have a appointment at the school. I'm just realizing. Yeah. Um, I think what we'll do is we'll end the stream there, and I'll implement this separately. Again, if you see this later and have any interest in whatsoever in what I'm doing, do let me know. Leave a comment, would be great. And if not, that's okay as well. All right. See you guys tomorrow. I should be on first thing in the morning, UK time. So maybe around 10, 11 o'clock. All right.